Hello, everyone, and welcome to yet another episode of Delegate Corner. I'm your host, Sinkas, and today I'm super excited to be talking with Griff Green. Griff is a serial founder who has founded General Magic and Giveth, among other things, and has made tremendous contributions to the space ever since his involvement with the DAO. He has some real amazing insights to share in regards to governance, as he's a DAO nerd involved with the governance of multiple different protocols. Let's dive into what he has to say, as I'll never be able to say it as he does. Hello, Griff, and welcome to Delegate Corner. Glad to have you on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Sinkas.
Right on. I would love to begin just by quickly going over your background and how you got involved in the space. So whenever you're ready, just take it away.
Yeah, so I have a pretty storied history in the crypto scene. I my first project was the DAO, and well, that didn't work out all that well. But since then, I've started and actually it was funny. Right after the DAO was hacked, like a week after the DAO was hacked, I went to Cyprus to collect the first degree ever given in digital currencies, which is a master's degree. So I'm the first person to ever have a degree in digital currencies, which is cool. But like my claim to fame is not the degree for sure. It was mostly recovering, trying to recover all the funds from the DAO and make sure that everyone got their money back. And after that, I've basically been a serial crypto nonprofit founder of sorts, starting with Giveth, which is like a donation platform. And then from there are other things that I started all with the same kind of like lens of like, how do we build something better than governments? How do we use crypto tools to build something better than what we have today to like manage our societies? And so that had requirements of like decentralized hardware, so we founded DAppNode out of Giveth, and lots of identity projects. Actually, Polygon ID, I was a major part of starting that project. At the time it was called IDEN3, and I guess the IDEN3 Foundation still exists. Also like Polygon Hermes kind of evolved out of that, as well as like Bright ID. And so like ID identification is something, if we want to replace governments, we need to do that really well. And of course, how do we govern our society? So I'm really deep into the DAO space, and launching public goods focused economies with the Commons Stack, and helped support the token engineering commons and all sorts of other projects, including General Magic, which is a like kind of the only for-profit company that I've started, which is a service DAO that just helps these kinds of organizations that are building things that are aligned with that vision of building something better than governments. We just try to find a win-win opportunity to help them build those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, amazing stuff. And while preparing for the episode, I did some digging in your background and everything, and I think we'd need an entire new episode just to fit everything you've done in the space. So that's amazing to see. And what would you say are your, main interests or area of expertise, if you'd like, in crypto in general?
Yeah, I would say like DAOs and governance and like maybe high level advisory just around token economics. I wouldn't say I'm a token engineer. I'm not going to whip out a CAD thing, but at least I can talk intelligently about like high level strategies around those things. But like for sure, public goods and DAOs and like I really would like to be more involved in reputation systems, but there aren't very many out there.
And do you also have a technical background?
Yeah, I was a chemical engineer back in the day, so I'm not a developer. I mean, I can read and write a little bit of code here and there, but more as just a like so I can understand what the devs are doing. Not never going to put something in production.
Yeah, it is very important to be able to understand the code, basically. All right, and what brought you to Optimism?
For what do I do for Optimism?
Yeah, what brought you to the ecosystem in general? Because there are so many ecosystem and blockchains out there that it's easy to get lost working in one particular area of the entire.
Totally.
But what brought you to Optimism?
Well, first scaling. I actually helped organize the first scaling conference for Ethereum in 2018 called Scaling Now. And so I've been following like how are we going to make this tech usable for real people that aren't just trying to make money using money, but people who are trying to solve real problems. And so scaling is like a huge piece of that. So I've been following work that Carl Flourish and the plasma group was doing back in the day, very closely. And then from there, the value alignment is insane. Impact equals profit is like, that's basically what I've been working on since I got in the space. The vision is basic. I mean, I'm so aligned with the vision that I just want to support in every way that I can.
Yeah, similar story for me as well in terms of alignment with the optimistic vision. I do agree with that. Impact equals profit is a very serious thing, or rather something that really entices me to get behind. All right.
Yeah, and I think it's understated how important it is for building something better than governments. Nonprofits, you think of nonprofits as the groups that do impact, but also when governments fail to provide value to society, people start nonprofits to do that work, right? So if we can get rid of the word nonprofit and just call them impact orgs or something, impact DAOs, that make sure and they have a way to get funding, that's what will eventually be a better system than governments. So impact equals profit is quite the revolutionary statement.
Yeah, you do raise a really important point, and one that I hadn't really thought of, to be honest. All right, and so you got into Optimism, and what brought you to become a delegate in Optimism?
Well, I've already been a delegate for several other protocols. So when Optimism came out, I was like, absolutely, I'm a delegate for Gitcoin and ENS, and I was for those first. And it's a bit of work, but neither of those are as much work as Optimism. I didn't know what I was signing up for, honestly. So much going on in the Optimism space, and it's hard to keep up. But I'm not really like, I start a lot of projects and I participate in a lot of projects because I'm more interested in the movement itself than the actual than the actual like business of these things. If I were just a businessman, I would spend all my time on Giveth and be building the best donation platform out there, which it is already. But I think that it's more about the movement, and I want to be part of this movement, and I want to help this movement move forward as much as I can. And I thought that I could do some good as an Optimism delegate.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's really noble cause to get involved with. And in terms of, I can think of some easy things in terms of being a delegate, like, the appreciation you get from other people for the work that you do, or the verification, if you will, the legitimacy that you get by having other people delegate tokens to you. But what would you say it's the hardest thing being a delegate in Optimism?
Getting feedback from constituents is the hardest thing. Like, I have no idea I wish I could get more feedback from my constituents. It's like, even you put out a delegate thread or something like that, but like, then you have to go check that all of your constituents actually delegated to you. Man, I would love to see a tool. If anyone's out there, Retro PGF will reward you. Give me a tool so that I could poll my constituents easily. I mean, I saw like Lefteris once airdropped a token to his like delegates in ENS or something, and then had them vote on something for them and then voted with them. Something like that would be so interesting, just to like even have an open thread or even know who delegated to you. It's even hard to see, so yeah, that's the hardest part, because I want to represent my constituents. I'll represent my own ideas, but I would love to be influenced by the people who are delegating to me.
Yeah, really important, because I've been thinking about this a lot as well. And I was thinking more about what it makes a good delegate in terms of like communicating to your constituents, but I haven't really thought of the problem of having constituents communicate with you and give you feedback. So that's really, definitely a call out there for anybody willing to build something like that, a solution to that problem. And yeah, as you pointed out, retroactive public goods funding will reward you once you do it. All right, and getting into the kind of like the values that make a good delegate, what are some, values from a cultural standpoint that one must have to be a successful delegate?
I would say like being decisive but not bullheaded. being open to change your mind, but at the same time, like being able to state your opinion clearly, so that people can, tell you what they think of your opinion. Like in the end, all delegates do is make decisions. So what makes a good decision maker? It's the challenge is that like good decision makers are generally like very important people in organizations. So where do they find the time to get the context? It's really you have to make the time to go get the context in these things. And if you're a decider with the bandwidth, then you will be a great delegate.
Yeah, really great insights, and I 100% agree with you. And on the practical side, what are some good practices that a delegate can have? You mentioned delegate communication thread earlier. What are some other things, if any, on the practical side that the delegate can do in order to be successful?
I think being active on Twitter, being active in social media, and so that people can see you there. Like, I don't know, I feel like it's a little weird with being a delegate in crypto with the way the tally system or whatever the system that all the DAOs are using, where it's like you do an airdrop, then you get all of your delegations, and then like you don't really get any more ever. And like I don't know, there's like I feel like there's rather than talk about what some delegate could do, I feel like there's some real systemic issues that we need to address. Like, I don't know, term limits or something, like some kind of rotation or some kind of redelegation. That there was like a cultural movement to do redelegation a couple months ago, which I thought was cool, but it's not really enough. I feel like people are just going to sit on their delegates forever, and I really worry about that. Like I feel like there's larger systemic issues to deal with, because right now, hey, you want to be a good delegate, you want to get being a successful delegate, if that's measured in like the number of tokens delegated to you, you just got to be active during the airdrop and then move on. So like I feel like when you ask me that question, I'm instantly thinking like, oh well, just be active in the airdrop, and that's a problem. So I don't know, I think what makes a successful delegate right now needs to be fixed.
Yeah, some very good insights on that end. And yeah, I do agree that we have some systemic issues in place, especially with like not like people that delegate, they had to have an apathy in terms of changing their opinion down the line, following it. It feels like set and forget, right? So yeah, definitely agree with that. All right, and you did mention that delegates are decision makers, and that's kind of like what they are important, and having a good context in order to form their decision. But at the same time, you did mention earlier that a lot of things happening in optimism. So I'm curious, do you have a specific approach to how you make decisions? Do you have a framework in which you kind of like use it to assess the proposals or anything that you need to vote on?
I mean, I try to check the forums and just scroll through once a week, like just try. And honestly, I'll be straight up with you. I sometimes when there's a good forum post, I will just copy paste it in a chat GPT and I say, give me a 3-sentence summary so I can understand what is going on, because I just don't have the time to really go into depth unless I validate. I have to go like steps. Um, and so I just try to stay up to date on that. And of course, when there's a vote, I need to research it fully, and sometimes I'll ask other delegates or other people what they're doing and why, and try to understand. Read comments of people that I trust, and especially when things are controversial. Sometimes the votes are really technical in nature, and it's like, okay, like the Bedrock update. Okay, Mark's got this. I'm not worried about it. Mark Tinaway is a friend of mine. Comes with me at Burning Man, and like, I had been talking to him about the Bedrock update over a period of time. So like, okay, it's ready. Great. I don't look at that one at all. Whereas when there's something that's more controversial or more detailed, like which projects should I support and all that, then it's like, oh man, I gotta go deep and look at these projects, and that just takes time. Cruising through the forums.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely hearing that from I think it's like a full-time job just keeping up with everything that's happening. As you mentioned, like so many things happening on Optimism that it's hard to keep up. But really happy to see, you and other delegates out there putting the work in and being informed and not just voting blindly for whatever they think is best based on minimal context that they get. All right, and if you take a step back and think of the like governance in Optimism in general, where do you like? What do you think is your view on the DAO in general? Like, where are some things that we're good at? Where are some things that we're lacking? Things that we could experiment more with.
I think there's too much reliance on the delegates or like on like a lot of processes that like I think the processes are important, but the processes should be managed, in my opinion, by teams. I feel like in some ways there might be a little bit too much experiment and not enough learning from the experiments that have already been done inside of Optimism. Like this last missions round, it was like, we evolved into, we started with, okay, we vote on every proposal as a full token house, right? And we vote on every proposal. And then it evolved into a grants council for a good reason, and there were lots of steps in the middle, and that whole process was how it was. And then all of a sudden we just started a new process for other things, and it was like we forgot about how we evolved into a grants council. So like I feel like we should be better at taking those learnings and just going running with them. I also feel like it feels like there's some kind of, it doesn't always seem clean with like OP Labs and the foundation and the DAO. It feels like there's like, I think for legal reasons, Labs just doesn't talk about the OP token or doesn't talk about any of this stuff. And of course they're very influential over the foundation. I like, we just know this. Come on. And then the foundation just kind of says these are things that are happening, and it's like, okay, these are happening, and then the DAO is very reactive, you know. And I feel like it would be a lot better if we could just have open discussion about things in a clean way, like around how funds are going to be distributed and these grant programs. I feel like there wasn't much of an advice process on, I mean, there was some advice process on the intents and the missions, but it wasn't like anything was going to change. It didn't feel like you could actually change anything about how the process was run. And yeah, so I feel like there's like, and a lot of this is because, oh, the OP token can't be seen as a security. Oh my God, and so hey, I'm sympathetic, but it's a huge issue. And I just wish that we could be real, that people could just say what they think. Oh, when is the last, I'm Carl Flourish and the OP Labs team has the most OP tokens. They are they are huge stakeholders, and they're just always silent. And that's so frustrating to me, because I feel like DAOs in general are supposed to be these stakeholder machines, like where you distribute stakeholder voice, basically. But then when we're hamstrung by like some external force that says you have to be quiet, I feel like we lose the real stakeholder understanding. And so I don't know, that's a big issue for me. I do, what I love the most about OP governance is this direction of citizens. I'm more of a reputation system than like a one person, one vote system kind of guy, personally. But I don't care. Like, at least we're doing something interesting that's not plutocracy, like at its purest. Because like, I think that for me, DAOs are all about stakeholder management, and capital stakeholders are important, but they're not the only stakeholders. There's labor contributions that are quantitative, labor contributions that are qualitative. There's expertise, and there's people who are impacted by the work of an organization, and all of these people should have voice, and that voice, in a good DAO, that voice is different for each level of input. Someone who is working full-time for the foundation should really have a lot of voice. And they do if somebody delegates OP tokens to them, or they have as much voice as any random citizen, and I feel like we can do better, but this is a huge step still in the right direction for DAOs that we have. At least we have two groups that are keeping themselves in check. And, it's also simple. There is a huge problem with reputation systems. If you're trying to balance all of the stakeholder groups, it gets really complicated. So, it's a tough governance. Design is a really tough, problem. And I think Optimism is doing better than almost anyone else in the space at balancing these needs of like keeping things simple while at least like mitigating the plutocratic approach.
Yeah, I think like it's very difficult, as you mentioned, structuring a governance process. And on the one hand, you have like a fully decentralized approach where nobody is in charge, there's no foundation or people working for it in kind of like in the picture, but then you don't really have process or structure, or it's really difficult to achieve. And then you have, on the other hand, something like Optimism, where you do have a foundation, you do have people working for it, you do have like OP labs, and slowly I think that's the goal of like having them like remove themselves from the equation. But either we are not there yet, which I can see why, or we'll never get there because it will never happen because they want to get like be involved. And it makes sense to me. It's like it's something that they built in a sense and they want to remain.
Yeah.
But it's, as you mentioned, like be clear about it and be open to discussions rather than remaining silent as a stakeholder.
I mean, they're the largest stakeholder group. This is all their baby. This is their work. So like, I wish that we could engage more with them and get their opinions on things. But it's fine. I'm sure the lawyers are stakeholders too.
All right, and so we did mention some, like the missions, for example, and we did mention RPGF earlier. What are and Optimism has done some really good experiments with governance. What are some of the most successful like programs around, like either the Grants Council, for example, or RPGF in general, or the RFPs in season 4?
I mean, just in general, like the evolution that I saw, slow, steady. I really love the processes in Optimism, and how they evolve and how open everyone is to change the system every round. And yeah, I think one of the most successful moves was this evolution of the Grants Council and how it was formed, and that like how it evolved. Like that's a beautiful case study in DAO governance evolution. And there's very few that I can say, like as a student of like DAO governance systems, I would say I've seen very few success stories like that, where the DAO just got more efficient and evolved its processes so well. I of course am a huge fan of retro PGF. It hasn't totally proven itself yet. I honestly feel like the results in the previous rounds are interesting, and not really what they were designed to be. They don't really match the design criteria. I would say a lot of projects that, yeah, I feel like we can do better and with retro PGF, but in general, at a high level, I think it's amazing. I think it's one of the most intuitive, and it's, of course, they didn't create merit-based funding. Like social impact bonds have been around for a long time, and there's a lot of like impact equals profit retro PGF like systems in the world, but they memed it. They got the little sunny guy right here, they got a good meme for retro PGF, and they've already bootstrapped the process, I would say, because like I am working on several projects for retro PGF, expecting to be rewarded by retro PGF without needing to be funded in advance, without having to go through the bureaucracy of a grant program. It's like it's amazing. It's huge, and it's so much more efficient. So I feel like the processes around how they're distributing OP tokens has been a huge success. and will be really impactful. And of course, like the super chain idea, I think is also that's what I'm most excited about. Like the user experience in crypto is so horrible, like having to go and bridge your tokens from here to there and switching chains, and like nobody can do this. No one's going to do that, that no one in Greece or Latin America is going to. I mean, of course, some people who have a huge like monetary incentive are going to do it, but someone who's just like cruising Twitter because they see this link and they're like, oh, what is this? Oh man, that's a lot of, I'm not going to do that. And I'm just going to click and watch the sports channel, like whatever. It's a huge barrier of entry. And so things like the super chain, account abstraction and other user experience improvements are going to make huge leaps. And I think Retro PGF has a chance to fund a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, definitely agree. And I think like a lot of people in the Optimus Collective are big fans of RPGF, and I can see like a big reason why. And what you said about the user experience regarding like super chain, I can definitely attest to that. I'm Greek. I've been in the space, like I've been involved with crypto since 2018. And whenever I see something like, withdraw some tokens there, then bridge them to this chain and stake them and then get the stake tokens, I'm not going to do that. It's like, it's too much work for something that should be simple. All right, and speaking of evolution and how things have progressed so far, where do you see the OP collective, 1 or 2 years from now?
Wow, I have no idea. I'll be honest, because it all evolves so fast. I mean, the super chain will be out there, and like the OP governance over the super chain is really interesting. And I imagine that will evolve in some way. I really hope that we can get more granular than the citizens house and the token house, like some sort of in between like reputation system. But I don't think it's going to happen in 1 to 2 years, honestly. But maybe in 1 to 2 years we'll be starting to talk about it, because like the people who are putting in work, okay, they get OP tokens and then they sell it. They sell the OP tokens. Oh no, OP tokens can't be sold. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that, lawyers. But no, they're gonna sell the OP tokens. It is money. I'm sorry. And so now the people who are putting in labor, they're just gonna lose their governance rights. It's not right. Like we want them to have governance rights. They're a stakeholder, So it's like, oh well, if you're a really rich organization, you get to keep your OP. And if you're a small organization and you have to sell it to like pay the bills, well, you don't get a voice.
Yeah.
I hope, and this is something I will be pushing for, is some sort of second token that at least is simply given out with grants along the OP tokens that gives them some voice. The people who buy OP tokens and people who are rewarded with OP tokens are not the same. People who are rewarded with OP tokens are builders, and if they have to sell the OP, sure, they should get less voice because now they're not capital holders, but they shouldn't lose all of their voice. And that's where I hope, one small thing that I'm going to be pushing for within the OP ecosystem. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I think it's like, to me, that always struck me as an odd thing in DAOs where people like contributors are rewarded with the DAOs like native tokens. Like if you reward me for my labor with the native token and I sell it because I need money, then I have less voice in the DAO, which doesn't make any sense at all. So definitely agree. And I would probably, get behind an initiative to have some sort of a second token, as you mentioned, be given to builders so they maintain some of the voice given to them. All right, and we start to get towards the end of the episode, and this podcast is about spotlighting delegates, but at the same time, it's about helping smaller delegates be heard and gathering some eyeballs to them. So I'd love to get your opinion about whether there's a delegate out there that you think has done tremendous work or has really solid contributions, but hasn't get the love they deserve, basically.
The people on the grants council, like Ghana and Katie Garcia and all that crew, like I just can't believe how much work they have to put in. They have a lot of voice and all of that. So, well, actually, Ghana does not have enough OP delegated to them. I would say that Ghana and what's Sugma, I think is his handle. Like there's a few guys out there that are really killing it. I mean, you already interviewed Breechies, who I'm like a big fan, and she has almost no delegation. So like, and it's really hard to get any because there isn't an airdrop that we know of anytime soon. So, but I just really am impressed with like the core crew that is like active in the forums on the regular. Jack, the people who are out there like fighting the good fight of bureaucratic DAO governance. They're heroes. They're heroes. It's a lot of work, and I don't think they get nearly enough credit for even though they're probably being paid here and there by doing these things. It's just like they're heroes.
Yeah, definitely agree. And what is like who is one delegate you'd like to see on the podcast next? Doesn't have to be, one of the ones you mentioned, which probably are
Yeah.
either already have recorded an episode with them or I'm in the process of doing so. But
I mean, Katie Garcia, for sure. But I feel like, I think the ITU blockchain crew is really interesting. They're really out there and they're really pushing, like, from the Turkish earthquake issue and then like just in general, there's like a pretty strong aversion to the local government in Turkey. They just had a really close election, and I don't know. I feel like the political side of the crypto ecosystem is the most interesting, and so ITU blockchain would be a great person to have on the delegate corner.
all right, yeah, definitely will be. And I'm actually already in the process of talking with them to getting them on the
Oh,
podcast.
nice.
All right, spot on. All right, and closing on a small, an optimistic note, do you want to give a shout out to anyone in the Optimist Collective, be it a builder, a contributor, a delegate, somebody from the foundation, an organization, anybody you'd like to give a shout out for their contributions to the space?
Man, that's a tough one. Well, I think Breechies is doing an incredible job, and she's really and Michael, of course, and you, Sinkas, you're doing a great job. Thanks for getting delegates out there, and hopefully we can get these retweets out there. And again, Katie Garcia, she comes out there guns a blazing. I've had many a debate with her on whether or not certain just directions that OP governance has taken are good ideas or bad ideas, and so it's just like, having these debates, and I feel like it's really valuable, and being able to manage it without like creating a lot of conflict is also really valuable.
Right on. And to close things off, where are some places that one could, get in touch with you or learn more about you? I know there are, you're in many places in the interwebs, but what would be the best way to learn more about you, but also contact you if needed?
Well, obviously Twitter, but like right now, Burning Man. Come to Burning Man. I have extra tickets. You want to see the real Web3 experience. Let's talk to burners. Let's talk to people on the ground that have revolutionary concepts and are practicing economic experiments. And then you'll get to see another side of me. I'm actually Santa at Burning Man. Very, very optimistic. Like I got the full red thing going. So it'll be really fun. We have art cars. We have an epic art car. We actually run a conference at Burning Man. It's like a Web3 conference, 5 days, nonstop fishbowl panels. It's really fun. Come find me there. Come find me there end of August.
I wish I could be there myself. But yeah, for anybody who can make it to Burning Man, I'll have Griff's Twitter in the description so you can find him there. All right, and that brings us to the end of the episode. Griff, thank you so much for being on the episode and for sharing your insights with us.
Thanks, Sinkas.
Right, have a good one, and thanks everybody else for tuning in. All right, and we're back with one final topic to discuss. There was this discussion going on in the forums started by Jack about undisclosed financial interests, and he was basically not accusing, because it's a strong word, but bringing up the other people that you were involved through General Magic with a bunch of proposals, and at the same time, as a delegate, you helped push those proposals to vote. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on that, or your opinion, your side of the story, and express your arguments in terms of why that wasn't as not bad, but as something like condemning as Jack made it out to be.
Well, I think the biggest challenge here is that like conflict, it's like, oh, we want to be a DAO and we want to like just do this in public. And I think that was probably the biggest like issue I have with the process. Like I helped start this organization called Gravity DAO, and its focus is on conflict resolution, right? And for many years, I've been working with Gravity DAO to bring conflict resolution tooling into DAOs. And like I made a mistake, like full stop. I have my fingers in a lot of pies, and I had a financial interest effectively. Like it's hard to say a financial interest because I don't really get paid for the work that I do in this space. Like that's where it gets a little weird. And so it's like, I just spend all my money trying to build this stuff. Like, so it's like, am I getting a financial interest? I'm promoting projects I believe in, and sometimes I have a financial win-win. Like with General Magic, I've started to have these win-win things, and we just started this like we were asked for support to do grants with some of the projects we work with, because General Magic is like a dev shop. It's like a DAO team without a DAO mission. It's basically the idea. So we do everything. And some of our clients asked us to help them write grants. Like, okay, let's develop a system that will be a win-win for projects that we write grants for. So we only get paid if the project wins the grants. And then we get paid in the tokens that the grant was won. And like, we were charging a few projects like 7 to 10% of the grant if it is won. If the grant isn't won, then we get nothing, right? Which is, I would say, not a good business plan. Let me just throw that out there. This is a bad idea. Go ahead, compete with me. Go try to write grants for projects and charge them less than 7%, and we'll see how long you last. The only reason this is lasting is because, like, we're okay if we lose money because it's about the mission, so yeah. Anyway, we had just started that program, and we had done some ENS grants, and like we talked to, like, the way the program works, it's not like, oh, hey, we will do Optimism grants for you. It's like, no, we will learn about your project and then see what grants you could match with and help you propose those grants. And yeah, every system has its own thing. I'll be honest, in some DAOs, like, you only win the project if you have a conflict of interest. I mean, it's horrible. Like, this is like, just every DAO has their own little system, and some of them are totally inside games, and some of them, like Optimism, are trying to be way above the board. And very few actually are like Optimism that are trying to be above the board. And so we didn't read closely the rules around all these things, and we're just like, there's a lot of chaos with Optimism grants. And honestly, I was way more focused on like the Giveth grants and the Common Stack grants and the DApp Node grant and all the grants that are projects that I founded, and way less concerned with like all the grants of like General Magic doing the grants as a service stuff. I just wasn't like, some of them I didn't vote for, some of them I did vote for because because I believe in the mission or I don't believe in the mission. And so yeah, I don't know. I should have disclosed. Like, we should have disclosed it. Honestly, I'm just a chaotic person and I should be more organized. But I really don't like the way that it was handled, because it created more conflict and more drama and really a waste of attention for so many people in the Optimism space. When there's a conflict, you don't just write a forum post about, the conflict. This is the general process, is that you go and talk to the person and get more context. And if one person can't talk with the other person, in DMs, then like maybe they get a mediator or someone else who can go talk to each person. Like this is how we do it in Giveth and Token Engineering Commons and Common Stack and all of my projects. We have this very clear conflict resolution process, whether it's two people having a fight or someone breaking some rules that are set aside. These are all conflicts, and conflicts are natural. And there's good ways to deal with them, and it's never all in public so everyone can watch the drama. That's not useful.
It was one of the topics in the forums that garnered a lot of like attention, at the same time a lot of comments and interactions. Like, if all that attention and feedback and interaction was under like other posts, things would be much better. Not just be out there for the drama, but also for positive things. The way I understood it, like the biggest issue for like the way I understood what others had issue with was that one, it was like undisclosed, which like I get like, to me, intentions matter, right? I don't think it was done out of malice, just as you mentioned, not thinking it through, or just not being as organized to have it there. Then also the kind of like the rules were a bit blurry, and I remember I think it was Justine that stepped in after the fact, and they updated the code of conduct to include kind of like grants as a service type of things. But before that, it wasn't like in the rules that you couldn't do it. So to me, like that's also a bit misleading, because if somebody came to the discussion after the rule of code of conduct was edited, then they wouldn't know if they didn't notice that it was edited, right? After the discussion. And so that's kind of like how I understood it. I don't think it was like, to me, the biggest issue was that it in a way it sets a bad precedent, like not disclosing it. While intentions do matter, because it's one thing to do it out of malice and trying to be greedy and get money, and it's another thing to try to support a project, especially like given your track record in the space. I don't think anybody would think that you would ding it out of malice, but at the same time, it's setting a bad precedent, because we need to have like processes, and it's too difficult to like go on case by case basis, especially as we scale and get more people involved, rather than having a process and code of conduct that everybody adheres to, regardless of who they are or their track record or their intentions for that. So that's kind of like my input on the discussion. But to me, it's like, it was like not, interesting to see it develop, the whole discussion in the forums, and everybody like their understanding of things. To me, it was very insightful to understanding basically the players in the collective and how they think.
But one thing that I'm really surprised at is that the fact that how many people don't like the idea of helping someone write grants and charging them for that service. I was really surprised by that, because from my perspective, helping teams write grants is actually work that we're doing to bring people into the Optimism ecosystem. I think there was like 10 or 12 projects that we, not 10 or 12 different grants that the grants as a service team helped propose. Most of them didn't make it in, right? Most of them were actually denied, like Unitap and Bright ID and all of these groups. Metagame was another one. There were several of them that they didn't make it. I think DAOstar made it. We did help DAppNode technically through grants as a service. But I was, very well disclosed on that one because I'm a founder. I just didn't disclose my involvement with grants as a service teams because I wasn't actively involved, but like at the same time, anyway, it doesn't matter. The main point here is that we brought projects to Optimism that wouldn't have proposed at all. And, we could just bring them to Arbitrum, or we could bring them to other projects, but we want them to go to Optimism because this is more aligned with General Magic and Giveth and the crew, so for us, I think that I'm just surprised that everyone's like, oh, you're charging 7 to 10% of the thing, but like, well, if we don't do that, like then the founders are going to take their time away from whatever they're supposed to be doing to figure out how the Optimism grants work, write the grant, follow up with the grant, and do all that work. And they're likely to also pad the price of the grant because they have to do that work, at least if they're actually counting like how much work it is to do a grant and do all that research. So I actually just don't think it adds any cost to the grant, because in the end, someone's got to do that work. And we just are finding a way to, like, balance that work with it and make it something you can outsource. So especially for small teams with like 2 or 3 people, they don't have someone who can just go and research all the governance processes for all the grant systems for Arbitrum and Mantle. And it's not like this is just a service for Optimism. ENS has their small grant system, and there's all these opportunities for projects to get funding in this space, and we're just trying to help public goods projects get funded in the space. So I was really surprised to see the distrust of a service, like, because General Magic has these services for design, has the services for development, has the services for comms and grant writing. It's like, if we were doing some project's design, and they just didn't write, oh yeah, our designer is like General Magic or something, is like, they just left them off the team, it wouldn't be a big deal. It's like, oh well, yeah, they're paying for someone else to do the design. It's like, okay, well,
Two very like important pieces of information to keep in mind for anybody thinking that is like, one, it is work to go through grants process, not just the application, right, but also following it up with it. Two, it's especially like since General Magic does that for multiple different protocols and DAOs. It's like I myself have been involved with like 6 protocols so far in their governance process, and reading up on that and getting involved in one way and another. And it's like, it's a hassle, right? Getting everything and having it kind of like be aware of how everything works, especially when you get to like something like grants, which is even more bureaucracy. And third, and most importantly, like some people are good at building but bad at bureaucracy, right? Some people might be good at writing code and building things or designing, but do not have the patience or the understanding or the experience or the skills even to sit down and do a grants application. So that's definitely similar to how, for example, I didn't make this background, right? I got somebody to do it for me, but that doesn't mean that it's bad. Like, I'm not good at graphics. I've had someone do the background because I'm good at hosting the podcast. That's what I can do. Similar, I could be good at writing code and building a website or a platform, whatever, but not good at sitting down and filling the grants application and following up with that process. So that's definitely acceptable for me to get somebody to do it. Yeah, for me, like, that wasn't an issue at all. It was mostly about being like having it just because it's in the rules, like Code of Conduct, and we shouldn't go like case by case, but rather just everything like the Code of Conduct basically applies to everyone. So that's it.
Totally. And I screwed that up, it's not like at no point did I say, oh, what are you talking about? In fact, I'm the person who said, no, I have this, here's my interests that I didn't disclose, because, so like, and here they all are. And then it's like, hey, those are wrong.
I think at the end of the day, like, no harm was done anywhere, and it was just mostly, and that's how I saw it, just the thing that prompts a discussion about those things and brought the revision of the Code of Conduct. And to me, that's where everything ended, or should have ended. If anybody has beef with you,
yeah, totally.
We can also get Jack on the podcast, but also have this discussion with him as well to get his side of the story. I don't want anybody accusing me of taking sides or whatever. I'm just hosting.
Yeah.
All right. So that would be all. And now that's the real end of the episode.
Yeah, thanks for the postscript on this one.
Absolutely.